So what's the deal with global warming?
Lies, all of it.
But humans are adding so much CO2 to the atmosphere.
CO2 is constantly traveling between different parts of the environment. It's called the carbon cycle.
Isn't that insignificant compared to the tens of billions of tons that humans produce every year?
Actually, in the natural carbon cycle, hundreds of billions of tons of carbon travel between different carbon stocks every year. The stocks themselves contain quintillions of tons of carbon.
Fine, but the extra from humans is still causing a greenhouse effect.
The greenhouse effect is essential to life on Earth. Without it, we would all freeze, and 95% of greenhouse gases are just water vapor. CO2 only makes up about 0.04% of the atmosphere. The atmosphere is about 1/10,000th more CO2 today than it was a century ago.
Temperature has still always increased with our CO2 output. I guess that 10,000th extra makes a big difference.
Temperature doesn't correlate with human CO2 production. In the economic boom after World War II, the temperature was falling while CO2 emissions soared. Climate scientists thought we were heading for another ice age.
They did? What happened?
The temperature started rising again, but people being afraid of such a looming environmental disaster had newspapers sold out and attracted billions in research grants. So global cooling became global warming.
The average global temperature is still about 1 degree higher now than it was a few hundred years ago. Even if it went down a bit, it's still going up in the long run.
It would be strange if it wasn't going up.
Why?
At the moment, we're in what's called an interglacial period. Glacial periods, colloquially called ice ages, happen in a regular pattern. The temperature has been rising since the last one ended. The previous interglacial period got about 3 degrees Celsius warmer than now before starting to cool on its way back towards an ice age.
If it's not humans, then what causes it?
The sun, mainly, although there are many factors. The sun doesn't stay the same any more than the Earth does, and has its own climate, which is called solar weather. Changes in solar weather not only affect the amount of warmth we receive, but are also indirectly responsible for our planet's cloud formation.
Climate journalists always say the sun doesn't control the climate.
Well, they phrase it as the sun doesn't affect the climate, but it's indirectly responsible for almost everything relating to our climate. A truly disingenuous statement.
If that's the case, then why would they lie? Why would they risk their reputation for nothing?
Not for nothing. Even if the anthropogenic global warming myth started as an honest misunderstanding by scientists, now it has become a major industry. It redirects the flow of billions of dollars, and tens of thousands of jobs depend on it. It was even rebranded as climate change to protect it against the temperature starting to go down again like it has in 2021 and 2022. Plus, as you say, many reputations would be ruined if they admitted the myth.
Okay, but governments and major NGOs don't need money from peddling scary stories, and they don't have good reputations anyway. Why would they go along with it if it doesn't benefit them?
Now we've reached the real heart of the matter, what some people would call the conspiracy theory. The best active theory is the following. Governments and major NGOs want the power to control and monitor everybody, but nobody would give away their freedoms if everything is fine.
It's not like they're forcing people to give up their car and to stop eating meat.
That's how tyranny always starts. First they say you should, then they say you aren't, then they say you must.
But they couldn't enforce it even if they wanted to. For example, I can go into a supermarket and buy a steak with cash.
That's where digital ID and central bank digital currency comes in. It's always marketed to sound friendly at first. Ride your bike to work and earn points which you can spend on free museum excursions. Avoid eating meat and receive discounted flight prices. But allowing ourselves to be onboarded to a system where we have no control over the rules is a terrifying risk, especially if we also accept a transition towards a cashless society. One change to the rules which those in power could use a narrative like climate change to create, and each of us would be one politically incorrect decision away from our basic freedoms being stolen.
But if they really did that, then we would just come together and stand against it. Nobody would stand for this kind of abuse, and there are 8 billion of us.
This is where the genius of their tactics comes into play. They use those they have already convinced to brainwash or guilt others into following suit. As when one adopts a belief system from propaganda, they are always given the illusion that they are good or smart for having this affinity, and that individual's defense mechanisms then serve to protect that belief with every mental loophole they can. If the house of cards were to fall, the ego would be shattered, and many people are quite agreeable. If their long-term friend has a strong opinion on a topic, they often adopt it and mirror the strength of belief due to the element of the human condition where we instinctively try to fit in with the group.
So you're saying they want to prey on people's want to feel noble by luring them into a strong political stance, which you then claim they will push onto others? Bit far-fetched, no?
Do you remember how COVID-19 vaccines were optional until they weren't? Do you remember how the vaccinated were told to blame the unvaccinated? There were many people unsure of how to react in that situation, but would comply with what others were doing for the same element of the human condition. And the underlying fear of fines or prison time created an environment where free-thinking individuals struggled to be heard.
I guess I understand about the vaccines, as my government did lie about needing only 2, and the lockdowns they made us go through were much longer and more frequent than they told us. And I'm not proud to admit it, but I did tell the occasional person to put their mask on in the supermarket.
It takes courage to admit one's own weakness. And this modern concept of intrinsic equality does help to delude those who lack education on the topic into believing they have just as strong of an understanding as anyone else, when the reality is that they are just a horse on a treadmill chasing the carrot of happiness.
So what can we do about it?
Those of us that can see what's really happening have a responsibility. Challenge your friends and family on their propaganda-based beliefs. Be calm and be reasonable. We're all on the same team. And if you're too lazy, at least like the video, subscribe for similar content, and share this video with somebody who is brainwashed.